discovered the incredible truth. What I saw outside the hospital changed everything forever. Emily rushed down the tree-lined street, the sidewalks aglow under the flickering streetlights. Her scrubs clung to her with the promise of another long shift at the hospital. Yet her mind churned with the weight of her dual responsibilities. A single mother of two, she was used to feeling pulled in countless directions. But today there was an urgency within her that clawed at her resolve. As she brushed past the inviting allure of a family garage, laughter and camaraderie spilled out like a warm embrace, tugging at a part of her that longed for connection. A history she thought had faded into the background. Stepping closer, she caught snippets of banter among mechanics, and for a moment, the world outside her hospital's sterile walls transformed into something vibrant, alive with the legacy of craftsmanship. A thought flickered through her, a memory of her father, a once great mechanic revered in their small Midwest town. But that legacy felt distant now, wrapped in layers of time and a slow decline in health that gnawed at her heart. Could she ever bridge the chasm between what was and what could be? The sense of potential was uncanny. Yet as her fingers brushed against the edge of nostalgia, doubt crept in, thick as fog. Emily hesitated, torn between the laughter of the mechanics and her commitment to caring for patients strewn across hospital beds, looking for comfort amid pain. Two worlds, colliding. But could she truly aspire to merge them? Her breath hitched at the thought. What if she stepped into her father's shoes, inherited his dreams, and transformed the pride embedded in Greece into a community health initiative? No one had doubted her nursing skills. But in this unfamiliar territory, could she stand tall among those who deemed her place fixed beneath the fluorescent lights of the hospital? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. That newfound determination flickered precariously against a backdrop of expectations, however. The moment her colleagues discovered her ambitions of merging nursing with her father's mechanical ingenuity, she envisioned the derision. Condescending smiles and remarks reminding her of her place. The thought alone sent her heart racing, her stomach knotting. Would she dare to challenge the status quo? Each rejection felt like a weight shackling her down, amplifying anxiety swirling within. What if she failed, casting shadows over her father's legacy, and the little ones looking up to her with pure adoration? Then life struck hard. A phone call rattled her world. Her father's health had suddenly deteriorated. The reality struck like a tire blowout on a quiet road, unexpected and jarring. Torn between staying at the hospital where she was needed or being at her father's side, battling with her need to uphold the legacy his heart had crafted, pain and hope intertwined in confusion. As doubt consumed her, she felt the walls closing in, unable to breathe, standing on the precipice of two lives with impossibly divergent paths. Just then, hovering over the mechanic's laughter, an old toolbox piqued her curiosity, hidden like a secret beneath years of dust. What could lie inside? What if this very moment led her to the answer she'd been seeking all along, questioning the very essence of family and her own dreams? Emily's fingers trembled as she brushed away the dust from the old toolbox. It felt foreign yet intimately familiar, as if she had unearthed not just tools, but shards of her past. She hesitated, heart thumping in her chest as the reality of her father's condition clawed at her thoughts. What use was her nostalgia if her father wasn't there to witness her potential transformation? With a deep breath, she flipped the toolbox open. Layers of history unfolded. Rusty wrenches, chipped screwdrivers, and crumpled sketches of intricate designs her father had once drawn. Each item whispered stories of dedication, forming an undeniable bond to the man she cherished. The mechanics laughed merrily in the backdrop, but their noise felt distant under the weight of her contemplation. Emily realized this wasn't merely a collection of tools. It was her father's spirit contained within every dent and rust mark. The thought ignited a flicker of resolve in her gut. She could honor his legacy, not simply by caretaking his memories or following his path, but by carving out a new one, integrating her nursing experience into his craftsmanship. What if the garage could become an outreach hub, offering health workshops interwoven with practical mechanics? It felt audacious, yet exhilarating. The image of her father, scheming in their driveway, narrating mechanical instructions in simple terms, sparked another idea. His ability to connect with each customer and filter complicated machinery into relatable scenarios was something she, too, had mastered in her nursing career. It was about bridging the gap between understanding and application. Could she blend medical education with practical skills? If she cared for her patients with the same passion he had for his craft, perhaps she could spark change in their lives. But apprehension surged again as her thoughts raced. Would she be taken seriously? When she approached her colleagues with this idea, would they laugh in her face? Would the nurses who saw her as a healer of wounds only scoff at her ambition to raise concerns of wellness through mechanical workshops? Each nervous thought spiraled into a storm of worry that threatened to drown her newfound ambition. Just then, the phone vibrated violently against her hip, a jolt that rooted her back to her current reality. It was the hospital. Her shift was starting imminently. With an inner groan, she closed the toolbox, its secrets ungrasped for now, but not forgotten. She stood at the crossroads, eager yet terrified, duty tugging her toward the hospital like a familiar current, while threaded memories of her father beckoned her to explore an untraveled path. As Emily hurried to the hospital, her mind swirled with tension. She had taken only a small step today, but it felt monumental. The possibilities loomed ahead like an uncharted road, twisting and turning. Engaging in this new venture could lead to failure or success, but either outcome might benefit her family, her patients, and potentially honor her father. Emerging from the fog of her decision-making, a shift in awareness struck Emily. The faint echoes of laughter from the garage played in her mind, expanding her resolve. Somewhere between the mechanic's trivial banter and her father's touch, there was a different truth. The realization that every challenge could morph into an opportunity. All she needed to do was act, but as the hospital doors opened, a wave of doubt crashed over her once more. Could she summon the courage to confront her co-workers, revealing her dream, risking ridicule when they could see her as simply a nurse, not a leader? Her chest tightened at the thought. The moment of truth was upon her, and she was left standing before those fortress-like doors designed to keep dreams at bay. What choice would she make when she stepped inside? Would she embrace vulnerability and lay bare her ambitions, or shy away and retreat into familiar confines of her role? The air around her crackled, charged with potential, almost demanding resolution. With each beat of her heart echoing the uncertainty of her future, Emily knew she was on the precipice of something significant. If only she could muster the will to leap into the unknown where possibility awaited. The sterile scent of antiseptic hit Emily like a wave as she stepped into the hospital, an instantly familiar yet confining embrace. The sounds of machinery and the low murmur of chatter wrapped around her, grounding her back into the reality of her daily routine. She felt a familiar tug at her heart, the gravitational pull of her responsibilities as a nurse anchoring her thoughts. Today, however, was different. Her mind wasn't just filled with the tasks ahead, but with a daring vision that refused to fade. As she made her way to the nurse's station, Emily couldn't shake the vivid image of that old toolbox. It had ignited something buried within her, stirring a yearning for more than what her nursing career currently offered. She wasn't just a healer of bodies. She had the potential to empower minds, too. Her colleagues greeted her with smiles, yet there was an underlying comfort within their familiarity that seemed stifling. The sparkle of uncertainty at what she could propose lingered like a fog in the back of her mind. Would they dismiss her bold ambition? Would she face those concerned looks, the same ones that echoed her own doubt? Ignoring the uneasy thrum in her chest, she focused on preparing for the day ahead. As she entered her first patient's room, the sights and sounds of the ward enveloped her. She was multitasking through assessments, all while checking for new orders, but her thoughts danced between tasks. This was what she'd trained for. Yet the notion of combining health workshops with practical skills pulled at her like an invisible thread, demanding her attention. Could this be the very direction she sought to take her career? The hours passed, each patient awakening a sense of purpose in her. Emily found herself navigating through conversations with empathy, connecting with them in deeper, more meaningful ways. The way she engaged with her patients mirrored her father's interactions with customers. With each moment, she felt confidence blooming in her, a thought shimmering just beneath her doubts. Her talents could transcend beyond bedside care. In a rare lull, Emily seized the moment, her phone buzzing with notifications. One stood out, a message reminder about the departmental meeting scheduled for the following day. A palpable tension gripped her as she realized this might be the opportunity she needed to voice her vision. Was she ready to embrace vulnerability? To share the fusion of her passions? To risk rejection from those she'd long respected? As her shift wound down, dread festered in her gut. The nurses would likely view her perceived eccentricity of health workshops blended with mechanics as frivolous, dismissing her insights as whims of a dreamer. But was that not an essential part of growth, challenging the status quo? The weight of expectation coursed through her veins. The expectation to stay confined within the boundaries of her profession, or push against them. Determined, Emily stood in front of the mirror in the break room, taking in the reflection staring back. Was she truly just a nurse, or was there more evolving underneath? This was her moment to dig deep and draw on her experiences to craft something original. Her heart raced as she envisioned her father's pride, the satisfaction of helping not just individuals, but communities. With the sun dipping low outside the hospital's windows, darkening the sterile space with hues of twilight, Emily resolved to be authentic. Her voice would carry significance if rooted in her true identity and aspirations. The first step towards her audacious dream, she realized, began with that meeting. The following morning's challenge loomed over her, but as she pushed through her self-doubt, a fierce flicker of hope ignited within. Could she harness the uncertainties clouding her thoughts, transform them into rallying points to support her vision? Stepping from the break room, she caught a glimpse of the weathered toolbox in the back of her mind. The merging of her worlds was seeking emergence, poised to reshape the landscape of her profession. The hospital buzzed with routine, but for Emily, every sound was a prelude to the change she was determined to manifest. As her heart raced with anticipation for the meeting, she wondered, would the very essence of her journey lead to unexpected revelations, pushing her toward new understandings of her place in the world? The moment had come to face whatever lay ahead and claim her space, not as just a nurse, but a pioneer, a different kind of healer altogether. The path illuminated before her was both thrilling and terrifying. Would she reclaim her father's legacy, or would her dreams remain shrouded in uncertainty? The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting a sterile glow in the conference room as the day's meeting began. Emily sat at the long table, her palms clammy against the polished wood. A small knot sat heavy in her stomach as the familiar faces of her colleagues filled the seats around her. They discussed routine updates and patient care metrics, the usual cadence of clinical chatter. But Emily found it increasingly hard to focus. Her mind wrestled with sharp contrasts, the drumming pulse of urgency to present her vision battling against the lingering doubt of fitting in. When the floor was opened for new proposals, her heart pounded. She could feel the weight of expectations from the room, an almost tangible pressure to conform. Would her idea, an infusion of health education combined with hands-on practicality, be met with open minds or skeptical eyes? As she prepared to speak, she found herself questioning if she had truly considered not just what she wanted to share, but why she wanted to share it. In that moment, she caught sight of the nurse manager, Ruth, a seasoned veteran known for her no-nonsense attitude. Ruth had been the embodiment of the traditional nursing model, strong, capable, and ever reliable. What would she think of Emily's venture into uncharted waters? The fear of judgment rose, but Emily stood resolute, drawing from the well of knowledge she had nurtured over years of experience. "Excuse me," she interjected with surprising confidence. "I have something I'd like to propose." The room fell silent as all eyes turned towards her. Paralyzing nerves threatened to extinguish her voice, but she pressed on, fueled by the thought of her father and the legacy of ingenuity he inspired within her. "I believe there's an opportunity for us to expand how we engage with patients beyond traditional care," she began, her voice growing steadier. "Imagine workshops that not only teach patients about their health, but empower them with hands-on skills that promote self-care. We could demystify procedures and foster independence in managing chronic illnesses." A low murmur rose in the room, some nodding while others exchanged skeptical glances. Emily noticed the cautious demeanor of her colleagues, a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Could she sustain this momentum without losing their interest? As she elaborated on her vision, integrating simple mechanics of health into every aspect of life, she felt emboldened by the incremental nods and smirks of recognition. Her passion transformed her words from mere ideas into something almost tangible, and she observed the shift in her colleagues. They were beginning to engage. "But what you're suggesting isn't part of our conventional training." Ruth finally spoke, her expression unreadable. "Are you prepared for the implications this could have on your career path?" That one question hung in the air, a challenge laced with concern. Emily leaned back slightly, absorbing the reality that this was not just about sharing a vision, but about staking a claim over her destiny. "Yes," she replied slowly, emphasizing each word. "I've come to realize that being a nurse doesn't have to fit a singular mold. I want to combine my roles, to heal and educate. Each skill set enriches the other, and I believe it can genuinely impact patient outcomes." Her assertiveness surprised her, revealing a growing resolve that had recently been dormant. The room buzzed again, murmurs rippling through the space as some began to turn the idea over in their minds. While some voiced doubts about the feasibility, others spoke of potential benefits. The tension that had once constricted Emily's throat was now lifting, allowing her to breathe deeply. Yet within the discourse, seeds of resistance were planted, hinting at a brewing conflict. A couple of seasoned nurses remained adamantly reclusive concerning change, stirring a flicker of anxiety within Emily. Not everyone would welcome such a change. She inhaled slowly, bracing for possible opposition. As the meeting drew to a close, discussion intensified, showing signs of real engagement. Emily left the room buoyed, though a shadow of unease trailed her. Her bold vision had taken root, yet it now faced the potential tornado of resistance that could threaten its growth. Would her colleagues embrace this new paradigm? Or would she find herself battling preconceived notions relentlessly? What Emily knew with absolute clarity was that despite the obstacles she would encounter, her journey was just beginning. The echoes of support mingled with the symphony of skepticism served as a powerful catalyst. And deep within, she realized that facing this challenge was an invitation to evolve her identity beyond the nurse's uniform. A call to become a true advocate for healthcare empowerment. As she stepped into the hospital corridors, the weight of collective doubt hung like mist, yet it shook loose her resolve. With new energy propelling her forward, Emily wondered what other surprises awaited her on this path. Could her vision instigate genuine change? Or would the chasm between her ambitions and reality become too wide to cross? Emily's footsteps echoed in the quiet hallway, a stark contrast to the tumultuous thoughts swirling in her mind. Each stride took her deeper into a familiar world, now tinged with the uncertainty that had settled like a cloud overhead. The meeting had been a turning point, illuminating not just her aspirations but the rifts that could form in her professional relationships. The encouraging nods from some colleagues were uplifting, yet the hardened expressions of others reminded her of the pivotal battle ahead. As she arrived at her nursing station, the din of beeping monitors and muted conversations surrounded her. A safety net of familiarity. Today she would have her usual morning shift, an opportunity to observe how the routine of patient care unfolded before her. Still, underneath that routine lay a stark realization. What if this day marked the beginning of her transformation? Drifting into her daily duties, she glanced at a patient chart. The numbers and medical jargon were second nature to her, but she couldn't help but feel a pang of discomfort. Alongside this data was an instinctive urge to elevate the level of care she provided, to not just treat, but to inspire. During lunch, she gathered with a few colleagues, hesitant but determined to engage in conversation about the workshop initiative. She set her plate down, the clatter drawing attention. "Can we talk about something I proposed in the meeting?" she began. The way their faces shifted revealed the precarious nature of their curiosity. Some leaned in, while others withdrew slightly. "What you're implying is quite radical," one nurse remarked, skepticism lacing her tone. "We've always been trained to follow protocols." Emily took a deep breath. She recognized the seed of doubt in the room. "Protocols are vital," she replied carefully. "But isn't there more we can do? I believe extending our role as educators can significantly benefit patient compliance. Helping them understand and manage their own health can transform outcomes." The conversation turned defensive, as those skeptical of change dug their heels in. "But that's not our expertise," another nurse countered. "What training do you have to even lead such workshops?" Frustration boiled beneath her calm facade. "I have years of experience in patient interaction, and I've seen firsthand how empowerment can lead to better health outcomes." Yet, as if sensing her mounting resolve, one of the nurses softened her stance, prompting a pivot in the dialogue. "Maybe it's worth discussing how we can integrate education into our existing framework." Emily felt a flicker of hope igniting within her. This could be a bridge, and with mutual trust, it could open dialogues previously unattainable. What if we collaborated on a pilot workshop? We could share insights from our own experiences and combine them with educational techniques. As they continued to debate both pros and cons, Emily realized how precious each voice in the room was. Observing her colleagues' reactions became a lesson in patience and negotiation. Respect for shared experiences could be the key to unlocking new paradigms of care. After the lunch break, she returned to the nursing station, her heart racing with momentum. She understood that fighting for her vision didn't mean silencing alternate opinions. Perhaps this journey was more about creating an inclusive path, rather than singularly carving her own. As she prepared for her next patient, Emily found herself lost in thought. She could embrace both her role as a healer and as an educator, each feeding into the other. If only she could inspire her colleagues to see the potential. The idea pulsated in her mind, setting off a chain reaction of strategies she could employ. What could it mean for her if those once doubtful voices became allies? Her phone buzzed. An urgent text from a colleague about a patient requiring immediate care. The shift into her clinical responsibilities polarized her focus, but the thirst for knowledge and advocacy buzzed just beneath the surface. How could she apply what she envisioned in this immediate context? The unfolding reality of her ambitions loomed just beyond hospital walls, yet the internal struggles felt more daunting by the moment. Would she act on her ideas, or allow hesitation to cloud her judgment. Determined to carve out a legacy that fused her passion with the realities of healthcare, she set her jaw firm. Tomorrow, she would take another step, facing not just the skepticism of the seasoned nurses, but whatever obstacles her clinical environment held. As she headed toward the patient's room, the nurse's uniform felt like armor, but she knew she was more than her title. She was on the precipice of a profound unveiling, one that would either shine a light on her path or shatter the old ways of thinking in ways she could scarcely predict. Tonight would be restless. She could feel it. Yet within that unrest lay the promise of change. What awaited her in the morning could redefine everything she had once thought possible. Morning arrived with the soft light filtering through the hospital's windows, illuminating the tension-lined corners of Emily's expression. She stood in front of her mirror, a delicate dance of self-affirmation skimming the surface of her thoughts. Today was not merely another shift. It marked a pivotal moment, the possible launch of her educational initiative. Yet the weight of approval hung heavily, each potential confrontation echoing in her mind like lingering shadows. As she stepped onto the busy floor, the familiar sounds of hurried footsteps and beeping machines reverberated through her, sustaining her resolve. Each patient room she passed felt like a potential stage where her vision could come to life, should she find the courage to act. But the shadows of doubt lingered, whispering fears about judgment and the challenge of being the new voice advocating for change in an age-old system. Emily's first patient was an elderly man recovering from surgery. His grateful smile ignited a spark within her, a reminder of the profound impact of human connection in healthcare. While checking his vitals, she found herself enveloped in a discussion about his recovery. It quickly lured her into the lane of patient education. "You know, Mr. Thompson," she ventured cautiously. "Understanding your condition can help you take charge of your recovery." The moment her words left her lips, something shifted. His eyes danced with recognition. "You mean, if I know more about what's happening, I can feel better about it?" he asked, skepticism creeping into his tone. Emily sensed an opportunity lurking in the exchange. "Absolutely. When patients understand their treatment, research shows they're more likely to comply and recover swiftly." His brow furrowed as he absorbed her words. "So, like, if I learn what each medication does?" "Exactly," she said eagerly, her pulse quickening at the prospect of planting a seed in his mind. "And if you can manage how you're feeling, you might speed things up." The conversation became a lively back and forth, weaving through medical terminology and personal anecdotes. By the end of their session, he expressed his eagerness to understand more. As she stepped out, Emily felt a surge of affirmation. Perhaps educating patients wasn't merely a lofty dream but an achievable reality. Her conviction strengthened, the spark igniting into a flame. However, returning to the nurse's station, that flame flickered as she approached her colleagues. They were huddled around a workstation, whispering amongst themselves. Emily overheard fragments of familiar skepticism. Just because she had one good patient interaction doesn't mean she's an expert. Those words struck her sharply. The protective shell she'd put on felt vulnerable. Still, she could not retreat into silence. It would win the battle, but lose the war. Taking a deep breath, she approached the group with a semblance of confidence. "I wanted to share my experience with Mr. Thompson," she began, her voice steady yet inviting. "We talked about how understanding his care plan might improve his recovery. Maybe we can find ways to incorporate patient education into our shifts?" The room tensed momentarily before another nurse chimed in, her voice softer, yet edged with disbelief. "And what makes you think that all patients will respond like he did? Not everyone wants to learn." The snub settled like a heavy blanket, suffocating her burgeoning enthusiasm. But she refused to let the doubt consume her. "What if we start small? A few minutes of conversation with each patient could open up meaningful dialogues. Yet, the skepticism escalated. The voicing of doubts continued, and she felt the blood rush to her face. Was this change truly supported? Or did she stand on the cusp of singularity in her aspirations? Frustration coiled tightly within her. The only way to cut through the cacophony was to back her beliefs with strategy. A plan began to form, nudged by a sense of urgency. If she could compile data and the success of her patient interactions, perhaps it would provide proof, something they couldn't dismiss as easily. With every heartbeat, determination swelled within her. The conversation had shifted again, a moment of possible intrigue looming behind her defiance. Colleagues' eyebrows raised slightly. It was a subtle flicker of curiosity, a breach in the wall of resistance. But as Emily left the nurses' station, the question nagged at her. Was she ready to turn her passionate advocacy into actionable outcomes? There was so much potential waiting to be discovered, not just in her colleagues' responses, but also within herself. Uncharted territories of personal growth. As she began her next round of patients, a resolve formed. She would harness every interaction as an opportunity to reconstruct her approach. Change did not come from a singular moment of triumph, but through consistency, persistence, and courage. And just as the day began to unfold, a message flashed across her phone screen, an unexpected call to action that could dramatically shift her career's trajectory. Tomorrow she would grapple with not only her practices, but also the very principles that had guided her through every shift thus far. What awaited her could unlock new heights of potential, both for herself and her patients. The day dawned with the same soft light, but Emily felt a different energy coursing through her veins. The challenge of transforming her aspirations into reality loomed large, propelling her forward with renewed vigor. As she entered the hospital, a flutter of anticipation and trepidation twisted in her stomach. Today wasn't about merely introducing ideas. It was about substantiating her beliefs with tangible evidence. Before her first round of patients, she dove into research at the nurses' station. Data was her ally, and she meticulously gathered statistics that highlighted the benefits of patient education, how it led to shorter recovery times and higher compliance rates. Each number became a symbol of hope, offering her a battleground on which to advocate for her initiative, one that would equip her fellow nurses with a framework to engage patients meaningfully. Her pounding heart was both a companion and a hindrance as she prepared for her conversations. Today she would not only speak from her experience with Mr. Thompson, but back it with evidence to confront the underlying skepticism she'd sensed. After all, what she envisioned was more than a personal quest. It was about reshaping patient care itself. Her first patient was a young woman, Laura, facing a daunting diagnosis. Sitting by her bedside, Emily introduced herself, feigning steady confidence while her mind buzzed with worry. "Laura, can we talk about your treatment plan today? I believe the more you know, the more empowered you'll feel." At first, Laura's eyes reflected fatigue and doubt, sentiments Emily had come to recognize as common. Overcoming her own reservations, Emily began methodically explaining each step of the process, how the medications worked and their intended effects. As their discussion morphed into a shared dialogue, Laura began to engage, her initial hesitance melting away. "Wow," Laura breathed, her brow unfurrowing. "I didn't realize I had that option. Knowing all this makes me feel involved." As they talked, Emily experienced a rush of exhilaration. This interaction felt genuine. It wasn't simply about imparting knowledge, but fostering a partnership. Just as she prepared to transition, Laura posed a question. "But why haven't they told me this before? Wouldn't it help everyone?" An unexpected shiver of doubt crept into Emily's gut. This inquiry echoed the concerns of her peers. Had she stumbled upon a truth that challenged not just the care model, but the existing health habits? her soul ignited with a mixture of determination and anxiety. If she could impact this one patient's experience, perhaps she could persuade the naysayers in her own circle too. Determined not to lose the momentum, Emily sought to document their conversation. She noted Laura's reactions, the easy flow of information, and the potential it had unlocked. With her heart pounding in anticipation, she realized the data wasn't just numbers. It came alive with the stories that surrounded them. After finishing her patient rounds, she navigated back to the nurses' station to share her experiences. A collective sigh of skepticism greeted her, mingled with glances that spoke volumes. But today, Emily was fortified with her well-prepared evidence. "You know, I had a fantastic conversation with Laura, and I have documentation on how this can be implemented systematically," she declared, her voice steady. She felt the tension ripple through the room, and for a fleeting moment, it appeared her efforts had punctured their silence. However, the dismissive comments soon returned. "We've done our best with patient care. Changing things now would just confuse people," one nurse retorted, folding her arms defensively. A wave of frustration threatened to sweep her. But this time, instead of snapping back with irritation, Emily opted for strategy. What if we each try this with a couple of our patients? If we approach it collectively, we could gather anecdotes that could convince the administration of its merit. The challenge allowed them to reconsider, eyes narrowing in calculation, not dismissal. Intrigue shifted into the air, and she could sense the pivot. But beneath her resolute facade, doubt nagged persistently. As the conversations dwindled, Emily was torn between optimism and the trepidation of vast unknowns. What if this was met with resistance? Was she prepared to confront every element that lay ahead, including her colleagues' deep-rooted habits? The email she had received the previous day flickered in her mind. A call for a presentation to the management about her initiative. Clarity washed over her in a wave. This was the moment she could face that challenge head-on. Tomorrow would demand everything from her. Her convictions, her research, and her willingness to disrupt the status quo. The stakes were higher than they had ever been, and her journey had only just begun. Driven by certainty, she took a deep breath, calculating her next move. Each conversation, each moment, would be crucial in carving her identity not just as a nurse, but as an advocate. The time had come to remind herself. Personal growth involves facing the fear of judgment and embracing the chaos of progress. With her gears turning, she wondered how far she could truly stretch the boundaries of change, and whether she had the courage to dive deeper into the heart of the unknown. Hours before her presentation, the hospital's fluorescent lights buzzed around Emily, illuminating the notes scattered across her workspace. Each scrawled statistic and patient anecdote echoed in her mind, igniting a fire that coursed through her veins. This was more than a report. It was her chance to foster a new paradigm in patient care. Anxiety mingled with exhilaration as she rehearsed her talking points, ensuring each slide presented not just data, but a narrative that could captivate and inspire. She knew she would face skepticism from the panel. No one liked to change their ways, especially not in a field dictated by the urgency of established routines. Yet the memory of Laura's eyes lighting up at the possibility of empowered patient care played in her mind like a looping mantra. If only she could ignite that same spark in the management. As she practiced intently, the ticking clock became a mockery of her preparations. Her stomach knotted, and she felt herself slipping into a cycle of self-doubt. Would they refuse to listen? Would the very people whose support she sought become her obstacles? In her mind, she conjured visions of them dismissing her ideas, labeling her an idealist with no practical grounding. No. Reassuring herself, she acknowledged that every innovator had faced resistance. This was no different. Steeling herself, Emily made her way to the conference room where her presentation would unfold. Her footsteps echoed against the sterile tile, each step solidifying her resolve. The panel awaited her. seasoned nurses with hours logged in the trenches, and administrators chiseled by experience. Their expressions, however, promised a battleground. As she entered, she was struck by the contrast of the room's clinical environment against her mission to infuse warmth and compassion into their practices. She felt a wave of discomfort, but quelled it with a deep breath. One by one, she met their gazes, searching for a flicker of openness. "Thank you all for being here," she began, grounding herself in her passion. "Today, I want to talk to you about the crucial role patient education plays in recovery." As she spoke, she referenced Laura's journey, wrapping their shared conversation around statistics regarding recovery rates and compliance. Each word was propelled by the urgency to advocate for change, punctuated by the belief that nurses could make a profound difference in their interactions. The room grew quiet, her voice filling the air with a palpable tension. Yet, she quickly gauged their reactions. Their brows furrowed and lips pursed in contemplation, or perhaps skepticism. The uneasy silence that followed felt like an anchor around her heart. However, Emily pressed on, sharing her evidence and the implications it held for both patients and their caregivers. She showcased her meticulous research, advocating the idea that informed patients could take ownership of their health, leading to a better quality of care. Just as she finished her final point, a nurse questioned, "But what if the patients still don't understand? Are we prepared to simplify our communication without losing depth?" The challenge was before her, and Emily sensed it was a pivotal moment. Rather than retreat into defensiveness, she seized the opportunity to elucidate. That's the goal, not just to inform, but to engage. It's about fostering a dialogue where questions are welcomed, and clarification is routine. This change will take practice, but the impact is immeasurable. Her heart raced as the tension in the room shifted, with nods of agreement mingling with skepticism. Emily had ignited a flicker of intrigue. Perhaps she could turn resistance into validation. Yet her journey had just begun. The administration would need to be convinced, and coalescing her colleagues around this vision would be a battle of its own. Doubts flared within her, but she forced herself to confront them. What if this was met with a wall of indifference? What if she couldn't mobilize the support necessary for this initiative to thrive? She reminded herself of the stakes, not just for her career, but for the patients who would directly benefit. Their health mattered. With the presentation concluded, Emily left the conference room, her heart pounding in her chest, a throbbing mixture of hope and apprehension. She gathered feedback and felt the adrenaline waning into quiet resolve. Yet she understood that this was merely the first step on a journey to advocate for a patient-centric approach. As she glanced at the clock, she realized a new challenge awaited her in the form of follow-up discussions with the executive team. The pivotal test of her resolve and commitment to change. Could she marshal enough support to shift their approach to patient education? More importantly, could she withstand the coming storms of criticism and fatigue, proving that change was possible? With the dawning of a daunting realization, Emily prepared herself for what lay ahead, the ultimate confrontation of her capabilities and determination to transform patient care forever. The morning after her presentation felt surreal. Emily awoke with a mixture of relief and trepidation. The remnants of the previous day's adrenaline wore off slowly, replaced by a nagging feeling that the hardest part lay ahead. The email from the executive team announcing discussions about her proposal thrummed in her mind, a constant reminder of the stakes involved. Coffee in hand, she reviewed her notes again, hoping for fresh insights. Each statistic and story felt like an anchor, pulling her deeper into doubt. What if the executives dismissed her ideas as impractical? They were not just decision-makers. They held the power to either support or completely extinguish her vision. To silence the inner critic, she reflected on her core motivation, the fundamental need to bridge the gap between healthcare providers and patients. A journey she had walked alongside countless patients like Laura. Determined, Emily chose to frame her approach for the meeting differently. Instead of focusing solely on statistics, she would spotlight personal testimonies from patients, particularly those whose lives had been transformed by active involvement in their care. This was not merely about data. It was about the humanity woven into every number. She found comfort in the idea that stories could elicit empathy, even in the most resistant hearts. As she arrived at the conference room where the meeting was set to occur, Emily couldn't shake the feeling of being an imposter. Should she wear her nervousness as armor or vulnerability? She opted for a blend, displaying passion without losing the professional edge. Entering the room, the atmosphere felt thick with expectation. Two executives leaned over the table, their expressions unreadable. With a deep breath and a steady gaze, she approached them, ready to dissect the opposition. The conversation began straightforwardly. Questions about logistics and implementation arose, but Emily felt equipped to counter them with her proposal's flexibility. Gradually, however, the tide shifted when Mr. Thompson, a senior administrator renowned for his adherence to protocol, raised an objection that sent a chill through her. "Emily, you have to understand the pressures we face. Standards exist for a reason. How do you plan to guarantee that your approach won't lead to further complications?" His skepticism vibrated in the air, provoking instinctual defensiveness within her. In that moment of vulnerability, a flicker of frustration ignited. Did he truly believe that patient engagement would complicate care rather than enhance it? A quick, calculated response surfaced amid the chaos of her thoughts. "Mr. Thompson, I believe that empowered patients are a part of our standards, not opposed to them. They are more likely to follow through on treatment plans, engage in preventive care, and communicate effectively with healthcare providers." Their eyes narrowed slightly. The room shifted. Emily sensed the delicate balance of tension and curiosity. With renewed vigor, she shared Laura's story, recounting how the simple act of explaining her diagnosis had allowed Laura to ask questions, advocate for herself, and partner in her recovery. By humanizing the proposal, she aimed to bind the sterile data to emotional reality. As Emily spoke, she witnessed the change in their demeanor. Genuine interest sparked within their eyes. Perhaps her narrative had sparked a tiny flicker of realization in their leader's rigid perceptions. Yet even amid this small victory, Emily wrestled with self-doubt. Could she really expect to change hearts and minds on such a grand scale? Would a couple of poignant stories dismantle years of entrenched practices? The meeting concluded with a promise for further discussion, but no formal commitment. While this could be interpreted as a setback, Emily felt an undercurrent whispering to her. This was not a conclusion, merely the beginning of a more profound dialogue. Rejuvenated but still wary, she exited the conference room, heart pounding with both fear and resolve. She had bridged an important gap, but would that be enough when the real challenges arose, those involving physical implementation and resistance from her colleagues? Emily took a moment to breathe, focusing on the next step. It wouldn't merely be her responsibility to advocate for patient education. She had to persuade her colleagues. With her ambitions ignited, Emily knew the coming challenges weren't just about leading an initiative. They were a chance to confront the hidden barriers within herself and the healthcare system. What would she discover about her co-workers and her own resilience in this burgeoning quest for change? The sun poured through the hospital windows, casting a warm glow over Emily as she prepared for another long shift. Today, however, was undeniably different. The discussions she had initiated last week were no longer ephemeral dreams. They were tangible projects beginning to take shape. After gaining initial traction with the executive team, Emily felt a renewed sense of purpose. Her upcoming goal was to persuade her colleagues to embrace her vision of merging patient education with hands-on mechanics, making healthcare more accessible and engaging. As she walked into the nurses' station, the familiar buzz of activity surrounded her, but beneath it lay a current of uncertainty. The skepticism she had encountered previously weighed on her. Her previous presentations had been a blend of excitement and apprehension. Today, she couldn't ignore the apprehension dancing in her gut. Each glance shared among her colleagues could hint at fresh skepticism or newfound curiosity, and she was ready to confront both. Her first round of patients began. Emily entered the room of a middle-aged woman undergoing treatment for diabetes, armed with her newly honed approach to patient interaction. "Good morning, Miss Sanders. How are you feeling today?" she asked animatedly. The woman smiled. "Worried as usual. I keep messing up my diet." Emily seized the opportunity. "That's understandable. So what if instead of just focusing on what you can't eat, we talk about what you can enjoy? Would you like to explore some healthy recipes together?" As they began to chat about food and ways to incorporate healthful choices, Emily saw a spark of hope light up in the woman's eyes. They spent the session brainstorming practical methods and simple adjustments Miss Sanders could make. At last, this wasn't just about staff handing down orders, but about an engaging conversation fueled by understanding and empowerment. After wrapping up, Emily felt a surge of elation. This was the interactive healthcare she had envisioned. If she could replicate such successful interactions with more patients, then her idea might just flourish. Returning to the nurses' station, she decided to proactively engage her colleagues this time. "Hey, team," she said, her voice steady but gentle. "I'd love to present how I've integrated patient education into my rounds today. I think it could really resonate with everyone." Some of her colleagues exchanged skeptical looks, but other faces brightened with interest. "We're always looking for new ways to connect with patients," one nurse replied. Emily felt the gravity of the moment. "What if we held a small workshop where we could share our best patient interactions and brainstorm how we engage with our patients in the future?" she proposed. Slowly, the spark of her ambition began to ignite some of her colleagues' enthusiasm. They discussed different strategies over the course of the day, transforming their initial skepticism into collaborative excitement. Each nurse brought their own tales of patient interactions, and the brainstorming session morphed into a lively exchange of ideas on empowering the community through knowledge. As they concluded the session, understanding settled around them, punctuated by plans to support Emily's initiative through a collaborative training workshop. The tide began to turn as her colleagues, once unsure about her vision, sought ways to contribute. Emily could feel cracks forming in the armor of doubt she had sensed earlier, replaced by a fierce sense of shared purpose. With growing confidence, Emily's idea transformed further into a solid framework, integrating not only health education into nursing rounds, but also offering workshops in the mechanics of managing one's health. This gave her a sense of fulfillment. She wasn't just advocating for herself or the legacy of her father. She was carving out a new role for healthcare professionals. Weeks later, the workshop took place, a culmination of hard work and steadfast belief in the importance of education. Colleagues from different departments gathered, and Emily stood at the front, ready to guide them through discussions and activities aimed at empowering patient knowledge. As the crowd buzzed with laughter and dialogue, the transformation was undeniable. Emily saw her colleagues not just as nurses battling obstacles, but as champions for their patients, sharing wisdom and encouragement. When the final remarks echoed through the room, applause erupted. Emily felt an overwhelming emotion surge within her. It wasn't just pride in her efforts, but recognition for her growth. Her journey was about more than being a nurse. It was about becoming a leader. From a hesitant nurse fearful of ridicule to a catalyst for change, Emily had achieved growth not only within herself, but with her colleagues. Her early vision blossomed into a robust plan. Conversations were shifting. The previously resistant nurses sought to implement what they had discussed. As she stepped outside the hospital later that evening, the air was crisp against her skin. Looking up at the stars, she realized she had navigated the trappings of doubt into a landscape of possibility. With triumph swirling around her, Emily recognized her true achievement. She had conquered her fears, blended her nursing expertise with her father's legacy, and opened a new chapter in healthcare. Her journey wasn't finished, but the initial victory marked a significant milestone. It was this moment of redefining her path that empowered others, instilling in her a solid confidence that would carry forward with each patient interaction, each colleague she inspired. Reflecting on the profound changes occurring around her, Emily smiled, knowing she now stood at the forefront of something vital, connected, informed, and ready to heal both bodies and minds. Now let me ask you to ensure you never miss a moment of these powerful transformations. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that change lives. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support is crucial. Comment with your reactions and theories about this inspiring conclusion. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this journey of personal growth. Let's create a community that values resilience and change. Your engagement matters immensely. Don't wait even one more second to share.